Yes, a very good morning. You're still watching Power Breakfast right here on Citizen TV, and it's that time when you take a look at the headlines, and this is the time you've been waiting for. And my panel this morning is made up of Senators Ken Wamatangi from Kiambu County on my extreme right.
Kimani Wamatangi.
Senator Boni Halwale, okay, Kimani Wamatangi, sorry, Kimani Wamatangi. Senator Boni Halwale from Kakamega on my left, Senator Hassan Omar from Mombasa, and Senator Stephen Sang from Nandi County. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Now, a quick look at the headlines before we even start to the discussion. IEBC bosses resign as 4 picked to hire new team. That's a headline on the Daily Nation, and I think we will start with that. But let's continue this other one. On the Standard, Ruto lures Kalonzo, Raila farm on ticket. This is something you can even hear the the reactions already, of course. There's going to be a very nice discussion. Still on the Standard, panel to pick new IEBC team named as Hassan Group writes to Uhuru. And on the Star, Raila allies concerned over ODM cord crisis. And today we do not have any member of ODM on the panel. Yes, but we have the other members representing the other affiliate parties of CORD. And we have Hassan Omar from Wiper Party and Senator Halwale from Ford Kenya. But before we get to the politics, let's take a look, let's discuss the matters of IEBC. And of course, yesterday, of course, we understand that both Jubilee and CORD have picked members to represent them, 2 each to represent them in the selection panel. A few weeks back, we had the religious bodies pick about 5 members or so to represent them in that panel. Now, what next from here? Because yes, the IEBC commissioners led by Isaac Hassan have written to the president giving notice of the intention to resign. They've not formally resigned, as we understand. Now we have the selection panel. What next? Let's start with you, Senator Halwale.
Considering where we started with the demand for dialogue when the former Prime Minister had been out of the country for a long time, and it culminated in a huge rally at Uhuru Park, and went on and hit the tear gas Mondays that we used to have, one can comfortably say that the wheel has gone full circle and we have achieved 100%. People should not pay any attention to remarks from the former commissioners of IEBC. They are gone. They left on 30th of September. What they are doing, they are simply finding it difficult to accept the reality. They are still in a state of self-denial because it was a very lucrative posting to be commissioners. Otherwise, they are gone. We want to thank the coalitions, Jubilee and CORD, for picking the 4 remaining members of the selection panel. The only challenge I see in front at the moment is that we are not too sure when the President and the National Assembly will be able to conclude the exercise of giving us a new Chief Justice. Because these commissioners, to be in place, they can only be sworn in by the Chief Justice. So I want to urge the National Assembly to speed up the exercise. The President has moved. We confirm Justice Maraga so that he can now swear in the new commissioners.
Of course, Justice Maraga is set to appear before Parliament next week for vetting and subsequent approval or otherwise. But coming back to this selection panel, the team that is going to pick the IEBC commissioners, we understand that even them, before they do their work, there's still a process. Senator Wamatangi.
Yes, certainly, because we also need to be aware that the very start of the debate as to the suitability, the non-partisanship of the commissioners who are going to be picked, and how they will dispense of their mandate starts right from who selects them, the panel itself. And that panel must first come in through the right channel. But I must say, looking at the names that were fronted by both sides of the coalition, that we are hopeful that they will do their work as is expected of them, so that eventually we have a team that will do its work. Remember what we said here last time, and I'm hoping this is going to happen. The process will be expedited as fast as possible, because we must tell Kenyans that time is not on our side. As far as this process is concerned, as far as the ultimate goal, that is facilitating the elections of 2017 are concerned, there is no room to waste any time. Yes. But let's also be clear about one thing, that in that process of ensuring that no time is wasted and we do it expeditiously and fast, there should also be no room at all whereby we create any speck of doubt in the process as to who comes in and how they come in, because then this could very easily be used after we go to the elections by the losers in that election, and this time, you know, the losers are almost confirmed, you know, into sparking a fight. But as to how this was arrived at,
of course, the names you mentioned, those picked by Jubilee and CORD, Jubilee picked lawyer Evans Munari, and Mary Kagan Sorobit to represent the party at in the selection panel, and CORD picked Ogla Karani and former Judge Tom Mbaluto. But we saw that Chris Wamalwa, Member of Parliament for Kiminini, asking the President that even after this election panel picks the names for the IEBC commissioners, for the proposed IEBC commissioners, that the President should still come back and consult the CORD coalition.
Right. No, I mean, I think there's a legal process, but just first and foremost for the note of it, I saw the graphics person. The symbol for CORD is not an orange. There is a symbol for the CORD coalition. You did the right thing for Jubilee, that thing. But then when your graphics...
the orange is the audience. Yes, I think... We do apologize for that. We do apologize for that.
But that said, we have no issues. Even if you did CORD with an umbrella or a symbol, we are still one family. But it's just for clarity. Right now, the selection panel will be facilitated in terms of secretariat support by the Parliamentary Service Commission. So their next step right now will be to be sworn in and then to publish an advert inviting applicants for the various positions established under the Act. These applicants, I think, will be given a reasonable time of about 2 weeks. I don't know, because I think that is what often the law stipulates. So it will be within almost all the dailies, and then within those 2 weeks, the selection panel will then sit, shortlist, vet, and then now call applicants for an interview. We hope that whole process can take an average of about 3 to 4 weeks. Once then they forward the names to the President for appointment, and then I think the President forwards them to Parliament for approval. I think that is the process period. I think, and in fact, I think what happens is there's a process right now. Let us not be controversial. If Chris Wamalwa had any issues that he thought very strongly about, he should have proposed an amendment to the law when he was in Parliament. I think some of these things are within the course of legal duty, and he speaks to that as CORD or as Chris Wamalwa. Once the names come back to Parliament, they can have all the kinds of reservations, hesitations that they have. But for me, I think on the totality, I don't know Madam Mary Chicken, but the selection panel, together with the religious clergy, the clergy, not the clergy is religious, is a fairly credible panel. I have seen the names. There are people who meet beyond the threshold of credibility. I just want them to do a great job. They realize the stakes that are in the next election. They realize where the country came from, and therefore for them, I think they must be very faithful to the law and the Constitution in terms of getting a commission that meets the test of time.
So no more consultation after that, that the President has to go back and consult.
I think there's really no legal bearing to it. It was not factored into law. If President Uhuru wants to appear magnanimous, if he wants to appear like the statesman that he is, because after all, the choices will not be his, will be choices that come from
there's already a selection panel.
Absolutely, they are not people that are just appointed through discretion or by a Jubilee-dominated National Assembly. So if he might want to appear magnanimous, because he might be tied to a choice where whichever choice he makes adds up to the same. So he might want to appear that he is called on board Raila Odinga, Kalonzo Musyoka, Wetangula, to tell them these are the choices we have, and the day when he's submitting the list to Parliament, he can decide to have a walk with these four other people, including William Ruto, to actually send a signal that we are moving forward.
Okay, back to the issue of timelines, because it is a concern, and right now we understand that this selection panel that finally both parties have picked their representatives to still has to be formally appointed by the president. These names are being sent to the president for formal appointment, which could happen by 8th of this month. Of this month. We are already in October, aren't we?
Oh,
yes. This month, 8th of this month. Then they have to be sworn in. Then they have to sit for another 2-3 weeks to advertise for these positions. Then they have to vet, shortlist, conduct interviews, then present these names to the president, then back to Parliament. This process could go on and on.
No, it won't. What Kenyans should see that if we were driving with one vehicle behind the other one, instead of us having 10 meters between the vehicles that are following each other, now they are driving pamba to pamba. We will still get there on time. Yeah,
but it still will take at least 2 months, maybe by December is when you can have a substantive IEBC?
You know, Fred, I think the entire process has been thought out. When we had the joint parliamentary committee and the legislation that was that we approved and passed in Parliament, we thought through the entire process. We know that there was a delay of about 14 days because there was, you know, some small gap in law. We didn't provide for the law to take effect immediately, and therefore we had to wait for the 2 weeks. But I'm sure the selection panel will now have to find a way of compensating for the 2 weeks. Otherwise, the entire process, I think, was well thought out by Parliament. Just on the on the selection panel, we agreed as members of the two coalitions that we would respect the position taken by each of the coalitions in terms of proposing the names. You know, we agreed that CORD will give us 2 names. We agreed Jubilee to give us 2 names, and obviously they are giving us the best of their names, and therefore, you know, the question of the suitability of any of them is a matter that we are not going to entertain. And I think also the members of the clergy did their job. What now remains for the selection panel is to appreciate the fact that they must display the greatest sense of patriotism to ensure that, you know, they forget about the fact that they came in as CORD, Jubilee nominees, or, you know, the religious group, but provide this country with, you know, the professional commission that will help, you know, transform this country in terms of running the elections. So really, you know, from my perspective, is that the commissioners, I mean, the selection panel must now forget that they came in as Jubilee, CORD, or religious group, and carry out the responsibility of selecting a professional commission for this country, and, you know, displaying the greatest sense of patriotism with agency.
I've chaired a selection panel. You know, I was the chairman of the selection panel of the National Police Service Commission. I was the chairman of the selection panel, and I've been a commissioner. So I've served on 2 ends of how commission processes. These processes are self-propelling. So when you say that they said not later than, not later than, not later than, it means it can be shorter but not more than. So there's a caveat in law. But once you are appointed to these panels or the commissioner, there is almost a duty and obligation for you not to be under the direction or control of any person or authority. So therefore, there is a duty for you to remain objective, to remain non-partisan when you're in the conduct of this responsibility.
Okay. Now, I want us to move on from that because not more really can be said about it. We just have to wait and see as the process moves on.
But maybe you could allow us, because Kenyans might not be knowing who these people are. There's been a lot of noise and lies that we at the CORD coalition, the house is not in order. To confirm that all is well, we were the first to bring our 2 names, but Jubilee could not manage.
2 weeks ago.
We brought our names 2 weeks ago, but Jubilee was still struggling around to see if they could get people. So we have brought 2 people. Justice retired Tom Boluto is a very solid legal mind with vast experience. And even more important, Ogla Karani not many Kenyans might know who this lady is. Ogla is the Secretary for International Affairs for the Orange Democratic Movement. But more importantly, Ogla has served both worlds. She was in the think tank of William Ruto up to December 2012. When she discovered that the marriage between Ruto and Uhuru was a lie to Kenyans, she quit and joined the think tank of ODM. She is solid. She's very persuasive on matters of insecurity.
That's what I mean.
She's persuasive on matters of insecurity, on matters of the economy, and on education in this country.
Yes.
If there is any woman from the Kalenjin stock that is up to it, then it is Ogla.
Even from the name, we can't really tell where she comes from. But once again, we've seen a graphic where he's used an orange to I do apologize.
Fred,
He seems to suggest that Jubilee had a problem in picking your...
you know, I mean, but you know, in a time of crisis, at a time like now, you can let CORD try to score those small points, as in, you know, thinking that they were forced to bring names, you know, because you know they've failed in a bigger sense. But I don't want us to trivialize that process. And because you asked a very important question on how does it look like given the timelines, I think the example that has been set during the selection of the names and the interviews, which has given us now the name of the Chief Justice to be, I think looking at how that process has been undertaken and the time consumed, if that can be replicated, then I'm sure we are able to beat the timelines. I mean, the process of getting the Chief Justice has been fairly you know, efficient. We already now have a name that's coming to the National Assembly in a short, in a few weeks. We are going to have a Chief Justice. So I think if that is followed, we'll be able to have the team of commissioners sitting in office to do this work. As to whether CORD is organized, I think we need to get to the real issues. But just you know, even in a football match, you first expect, and there has always to be those guys who blow the whistle and the vuvuzela, you know, before the match starts. But it is when the match is played that you know who really is the winner. So that one, I don't take offense for them. They can you know, brag about this
1-0 as it is right now.
But we brought we brought our names our names were ready way before. I mean the people the people selected by the Jubilee side.
I need us to move on.
But of course, Fred, you must appreciate that if you have a narrow choice, a narrow team to choose from, it might take you a little shorter time to do that. The CORD coalition must have had a small team to choose from, and that is why they just narrowed down to the two.
Or they didn't have a wide choice.
For us, we had a wide choice of immensely experienced professionals.
This one is
that is why it might have taken us a little.
I'll do this at 1-1 for now. Let's move on now, because we need to move on from the IEBC matter. And as we continue with this conversation, of course, this news review this morning, we need to continue. The conversation is also online on Twitter at Senator Sang1. That's a Twitter handle for Senator Sang from Nandi. Senator Sang1 at Hassan Omar H for Hassan Omar from Mombasa, at K Boni Mtetezi for Boni Halwale, and at K Wamatangi. Those are the Twitter handles for the respective senators on the panel this morning. Remember, my Twitter handle is at Fred Indemuli. Also use at Citizen TV Kenya. Do not forget to use the hashtag #PowerBreakfast. Now, we do have senators here, and of course, you work for counties. You oversight and legislate for the benefit of counties. Now, there's something that is happening at the county level that because this is the only opportunity we have with a panel made up of all senators to discuss what is happening at the county assemblies. We've seen a lot of violence, starting from Nairobi on 2 occasions when that impeachment motion against Governor Kidero was being tabled. We've seen a lot of violence that was televised. We've seen violence even in Nyeri County. We've seen violence as late as yesterday in Kisumu County. And on the dailies yesterday, they listed that it's more than 10, actually more than 12 counties where such violence has been witnessed inside the county assembly. Now, this kind of behavior, of course, they could argue that they are justified, but this kind of behavior cannot go unnoticed or uncriticized. And I'd like to give you an opportunity to comment on this, starting with Senator Wamatangi.
I think, Fred, we must say straight-faced to the members of the county assemblies, the MCAs. You know, it is they have become a big disappointment to Kenyans. The expectations that we have had after promulgating a new constitution, after packaging, enhancing, expanding their mandate, giving them, you know, authority to be able to look oversight what is happening at the counties. The expectations are way too high for MCAs to again, and let me say this, every time an MCA has been referred to as or likened to the former councillors, they get very offended. They say, now we are a new team, we have a new mandate, we do serious work, but look at what they're doing. You know, this must be said to them. It is extremely shameful. It is not acceptable, no matter what the issues are, no matter how you feel about it, no matter whose name is at stake. There has to be a way of conducting this. And I think as Senate, we must rise to the occasion, because it is our work as the Senate to oversight counties, including county assemblies. And it is a high time, in my opinion, that one, we came up with legislation that is going to ensure that there is adequate punishment for that kind of conduct at the county assemblies. Because if we leave it that way, then there is not going to be any lawmaking. I've heard several times, actually, governors, and now what MCAs are doing to their own peril is validating what governors have been complaining and saying. They've been asking us, how do you expect a fellow who has just come from nowhere with no qualifications, with anything, to be elected as an MCA and come and oversight a governor who has been elected with a constitutional requirement that he's got to be a degree holder, he's got to have all these qualifications, and you're saying just some guys in the street there can come and oversight that kind of person. So what MCAs now are doing is validating those claims, because governors have been saying these guys have no capacity, they have got no even frame of mind to oversight county government.
Are we therefore saying that we need to probably raise the level of education, qualification required for members of the county assembly, Bonalole?
Maybe yes, maybe no. But to me, the fact that this has happened in the county assemblies, it should not be lost to Kenyans that the same thing also happened in the National Assemblies. But what is the connection between the two incidences? The people who perpetrated violence against Senator Orengo, Senator Mudama, Senator Wetangula, and myself in the National Assembly were actually members of Parliament who were previously councillors. So it looks like that councillor behavior, the councillor mentality that you see in the county assemblies is sending a message that education is important. Yes. Therefore, I regret that in the last parliament, Mungatana and I, we were defeated by Bishop Wanjiru and others who went and ran to President Kibaki to veto a bill that we had passed putting minimum requirements for education for these people. I am not afraid. That's why I said yes and no, because I know now where we have gone, like in Kakamega, the quality of people who are now aspirants is such that the former councillors have now no chance. They're going to lose because people did not understand the meaning of an MCA. So we're going to get a better caliber of MCAs in the second generation of MCA, I have no doubt. But more importantly, the issue raised by Senator Wamatangi, that members of the public must realize that the MCAs are supposed to oversight the governor. The governor is highly educated under the constitution, and you give him people who are not up to it. I don't think those MCAs in the county assembly of Nairobi, for example, would understand Governor Kidero. Governor Kidero is extremely highly educated, and vastly experienced. Some of the mistakes he has done in the past notwithstanding, we know them. I would want to talk about them, but because there's a court case against me about it, I'll hold it there. So we need to appreciate that, and we want to leave it to members of the public to make the final.
You want to be governor, you want to serve as governor of Mombasa, and is that, do you think that problem is something you would experience as governor?
First and foremost, let's know one thing. Education will raise the quality of debate. It might not necessarily raise the quality of integrity. These are integrity issues. So it might not necessarily have a direct impact on integrity. There must be sanctions. I think we must start to punish people who create violence within the assemblies. We must, the police, the DPP, NCIC, ESCC must arrest and prosecute.
Incidentally, do they enjoy a freedom?
There is no parliamentary privilege that allows you to fight. The parliamentary privilege is only limited to debate. So it is only limited to debate.
But we've seen in the National Assembly, no one gets arrested
even in soccer. Even these days in soccer, when you assault somebody on the pitch, that is not taken like fair play. You can be prosecuted for even the kind of foul, because it could be a vicious assault attempt. So I think what we need to do is to punish, because it is wrong to create a perception that people without degrees fight. There are a lot of people without an education there who have enormous integrity, but it is because we have not punished these particular crimes. We cannot equate degree to integrity. It just will improve the quality of debate. For me, I want to agree with Senator Halwale on one issue. I'm also saying, after people have realized what devolution is about, they have seen the rubber stamp style of Mombasa County Assembly. There are a lot of young people now who are fairly more educated, fairly more critical, coming out in terms of wanting to seek positions at that level. And for us, you know what you need as a governor in your MCA is not a rubber stamp. You need a partnership. You need a critique. They need to improve you. You know, people don't realize that oversight improves you, that democracy allows input and collective ownership. So you take the bullet together. So my hope is that a lot more young people, because I think we will need to remove that tag of MCAs being councillors, so that a lot of more people now can avalanche into this position, populate them, so that they can be able to meaningfully now impact on county governments. Otherwise, with this trajectory and this trend, we will not. And then parties, lastly, parties must not just be appointing psycho funds and whoever they want as party, minority or majority leaders. They must leave some of these functions squarely on the elected representatives to see who among themselves will be a first among equals, so that they're able to now also sometimes think about capacity. You look at some of the people who've been made either minority or majority leaders. I've seen Mombasa County and a few other counties. It's appalling. You know, it's the people who will not be able to read a bill, in the eloquence and understand it. They will not be able to decipher through a budget and be able to pick out issues. That's why they will use wrong terms and then try to clarify later when you raise the accountability.
In fact, Hassan, before you give Senator Sang, there's something important that Hassan has said about the immunity we enjoy as members of Parliament. The speaker who put it best was Speaker Kaparo. When members of Parliament had fought in the bar, I will not use their names, and he came and ruled that immunity allows you to debate in an atmosphere of peace and freedom. It does not give you permission to commit crime. And then he put the clincher and said, supposing one of you took a knife and knifed a colleague here in this house, are you saying he would not be prosecuted?
Yet those people who attacked you were never taken to court.
And in the books of Parliament itself,
we need to rope in.
Let me just put this to what Senator Halwale has said. If you look at the books of Parliament, in the standing orders themselves, there is no prescribed known punishment. If you are found to be grossly misconducting yourself, you are expelled. That's the most that will happen.
That's the most that can happen. Is that the same problem?
Actually, Fred, this particular display of impunity by members of the county assembly. We as a committee of the Senate, the Legal Affairs and Human Rights Committee, which Hassan and myself sit, drafted a bill on county assemblies privileges, powers and privileges bill. And we wanted to do, what we wanted to do was to provide a legal framework, because as it is right now, they are relying on just their standing orders, and some of the standing orders by various county assemblies are not prescriptive enough in terms of how to deal with that kind of cases. This is one of the bills that was passed in the Senate, forwarded to the National Assembly, and the National Assembly has not found time to look at it, as it were. But also, you have to appreciate that the reason why sometimes you see this kind of fist fights in county assemblies is where you have members of the county assembly who are unable to express themselves. That somebody then compensates that inability to express himself, by pushing a blow here and there. So that element, whereas I agree with Hassan Omar that, education, specifically deals with improved debate in the House. But it also helps these, the members of the county assembly to be able to express themselves. And once you are able to adequately express yourself in terms of debate, you are unlikely to resort to these kind of things. You can imagine the frustration of a county assembly member who raises a point of order. He has had a problem with what is being presented on the floor, rises on a point of order, he is ruled out of order, tries another one. At the end of the day, the default position is that somebody is likely to go physical. So I think it is important that we relook into the element of education, the academic qualification for members of the county assembly. We must also be able to punish adequately, this kind of behavior, so that then it is a deterrence to any other county assembly, in the future. So that
Omar is 3-1. Education should be relooked at. Education level.
I say it increases the levels of debate, but doesn't necessarily increase integrity. It is a whole issue about political hooliganism. Some of these people might not be fighting physically. They are educated PhDs. They have advisors. And they're the ones organizing violence against other politicians. You go to a rally and you find that the person who's as educated or better educated is the one who's put hooligans to rough you up. So education, I say, does not necessarily increase integrity. It's a question of Kenya punishing political hooliganism. We have punished election violence. There's enough caveat in terms of deterrence. It had become almost common practice in 92 clashes, 97, and then the 2007. So finally, I think we got down to resolve these things in a more amicable way. But then it is also we point a finger to the IG and to the presidency. How can anybody organize private militia in this country, or private hooligans? You go to a rally or to a political function and you're told a person X has a lot of young boys who can deal with it, and they are known. And that's a banana republic. For you to be able you're going for a rally, it is known that when you go to a certain town, neighborhood, and unfortunately we only go to these neighborhoods when we are looking for votes and youngsters for violence. That's when we go to the informal settlements. We are looking for youngsters to come and scream you out in the political parties, in the political rallies, and you give them, hard liquor, so that they just control cheer you out. You never go to them to look to give them jobs. So and they're known, they'll be told, kuna jamana itwa festo, huyo ndo mbaya. So before you wonder, how is this festo able to, and that's just a metaphor, there's nobody called Festo, by the way, I just came up with the name. So how is this guy able to unleash violence at every political gathering and tell me that the security apparatus does not know about it? So unless we deal with political hooliganism,
before you move away, for us to have time to discuss these other things, we need to take a short break now because of timelines. And when we return, we will discuss now the court politics. Of course, Deputy President William Ruto is now luring Wiper's Kalonzo Musyoka to join Jubilee. Is this just a statement without effect, or is there something underlying? Raila says he will not endorse anyone. It's also in the papers. And of course, Raila's allies concerned over ODM court crisis. We'll be discussing this and a lot more when Power Breakfast returns.